Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We have breaking news tonight from the pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson about a clinical trial of a coronavirus vaccine. They announced that they are pausing clinical trials for a COVID vaccine over a patient illness. Johnson & Johnson has released a statement saying, "We have temporarily paused further dosing in all our COVID-19 vaccine candidate clinical trials, including the phase 3 ensemble trial, due to an unexplained illness in a study participant. The participant's illness is being reviewed and evaluated by the Ensemble Independent Data Safety Monitoring Board, as well as our internal clinical and safety physicians." Dr. Anthony Fauci is objecting to the Trump campaign using video of him in a Trump campaign ad. This weekend, Dr. Fauci issued a written statement saying, "In my nearly 5 decades of public service, I have never publicly endorsed, nor do I now endorse, any political candidates. The comments attributed to me without my permission in the GOP campaign ad were taken out of context." The Trump campaign edited the video in such a way that it appeared that Dr. Fauci was talking about Donald Trump when he said, quote, "I can't imagine that anybody could be doing more." Dr. Fauci says that that was a statement he made months ago about the efforts of federal public health officials, not Donald Trump, who on the same day Dr. Fauci first objected to the campaign ad, said this about the coronavirus.
"It's going to disappear. It is disappearing."
That's Donald Trump on Saturday, and it is not disappearing anywhere in the United States. 32 states and Washington, D.C. have reported an increase in coronavirus cases over the last 2 weeks. That includes Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump is planning to hold a rally tomorrow. Earlier tonight, Donald Trump held what looked like a super spreader event in Florida, where no one in the crowd was social distancing and most people were not wearing masks, including the governor of Florida. This graphic shows that the states with the most coronavirus cases per capita since June are states that have voted Republican in at least the last 2 presidential elections. Today, Dr. Anthony Fauci said that the Trump campaign should take down that ad that includes his comment.
I think it's really unfortunate and really disappointing that they did that. It's so clear that I'm not a political person. And I have never either directly or indirectly endorsed a political candidate. And to take a completely out of context statement and put it in, which is obviously a political campaign ad, I thought was really very disappointing.
When Jake Tapper told Dr. Fauci that the Trump campaign might be creating another ad using Dr. Fauci warned the Trump campaign not to do it and said it could, quote, backfire on them, end quote, if they did use him in another campaign ad. Use of the word backfire indicates Dr. Fauci might be considering something much stronger than a written statement if the Trump campaign does it again. Joining our discussion now, Dr. Ashish Jha, the Dean of the Brown University School of Public Health. And Dr. Jar, before we get into the breaking news about the vaccine tonight, which I would like to discuss, I just want to show this ad put out by Republicans against Trump. This is Olivia Troy, who used to work in the coronavirus task force. And I want to show it before we get into our discussion, Doctor, because I don't want to drag you into the politics of this. Let's take a look at this.
I'm Olivia Troy. I worked on the coronavirus task force from day one, side by side with Dr. Anthony Fauci. I witnessed Donald Trump and senior White House officials routinely sideline and discredit Dr. Fauci, both privately and publicly. And now, the Trump campaign is twisting Dr. Fauci's words in a campaign ad for their own political gain. It's gross and upsetting, and typical of a White House that has no regard for the truth. For Donald Trump, it's always about him. For Dr. Fauci, it's always been about serving the American people. Join me as a Republican and former Trump administration staffer who is voting for Joe Biden.
Dr. Jar, going back to that breaking news announced at the beginning of this segment, Johnson & Johnson suspending vaccine trials. What is your reading of that?
Yeah, so Lawrence, first, thank you for having me on. My reading of that is, this is how clinical trials ought to work, especially for a vaccine. If you see something that seems unusual, you should stop the trial. You should investigate. You should find out, is this a one-off? Is this even related to the vaccine? Or is this a more systemic problem before you continue the trial? It's just a reminder of the kind of absurdity of some political leaders, specifically the president, asking that a vaccine be ready by the election day. It's just not how it works. We have pauses like this. They're very normal. And in fact, to me, they are reassuring that the process by which we're developing the vaccine is working.
I want to listen to something that the president said tonight in Florida and get your reaction to a COVID patient saying something like this, talking about how that he feels immune. Let's listen to this.
I went through it. Now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience.
I will walk in there and I will kiss everyone in that audience. Doctor, that harkens back to behavior we heard about in the 2016 campaign with Donald Trump. But what do you make of the message that the president is delivering there?
Lawrence, really from day one, the president has underplayed and downplayed this virus. We don't know if he's immune. We don't even know for sure whether he's contagious or not. And the idea that he would joke about a virus that has killed 210,000 Americans and talk about going in and kissing people, I mean, it's not funny. In my mind, it's not in good taste. And most importantly, it sends all the wrong public health messages about how we all need to be behaving as we want to get through this pandemic.
It is Tuesday, the 13th of October of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a mere pinch, a small, scant dash of hot, smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world, and it always does. It has for millennia. Yes, whole societies have suffered or benefited from its wonderful application. And just getting the paprika pretty much benefited or destroyed societies. That's how powerful it is. Well, ACB, I don't know why they want to call her ACB. I'm calling her Amy Coney Island Barrett. Amy Coney on an Island Barrett. I like that even better. Well, she's being questioned for the second day in a row in her run-up to being installed in or on the Supreme Court because, hey, when Republicans want something, nothing will stop them. They'll take all the time in the world it takes if it benefits them doing that strategy, and they'll run things through in the blink of an eye if it benefits using that strategy. The Repugs cannot win unless they cheat. It's been this way forever. Why else would they break the law repeatedly and then fix the law around that law breaking? Okay, So let's talk about court packing, shall we? Let's talk about laughing Mitch McConnell. Giggling Mitch McConnell, the guy who giggles over 210,000 and counting people dying from COVID. A little chuckle there in the debate with McGrath last night. Mitch McConnell and his cohorts blocked the black guy for 8 years. And then packed the courts as soon as Trump was installed in the Oval Office by Vlad. Now, there's some question about a chicken and egg aspect here. Did we learn how to destroy our judiciary from Vlad? Or did Vlad learn it from the repugs? I would say we might be taking lessons from Vlad. Because Vlad began to destroy his judiciary way back in the 90s. And the repugs really hadn't, at that point, revved up their machine to the well-oiled aspect that it is now. Oh, it's well-oiled. You get 3 Trump judges on a panel. How is that possible? Well, back in the courts, isn't it? So I really hate these charges from the media going after Joe Biden. Well, are you going to back the courts or not? I mean, those guys have been doing it. Are you going to do it? And if you do it, it's going to be really bad. Yeah, everything we do is really bad. And most everything that they do with a capital T usually goes uncommented. It's just the way it is. Nothing to see here. So the next thing you know, you've got a 3-judge panel twisting the law to fix the law. Now let's remember, these 3 judges that sit on this panel were all rated unqualified. Okay? We used to have norms in place. And we have idiots like Rich Lowry accusing Biden of upsetting norms. Where has this guy been? Ben Shapiro out there whining that Joe is going to upset norms. Ben, you're a Vichy collaborator. And you know what happened to Vichy collaborators back in the day? You have a really nice head of hair. Wouldn't you like to keep it? Wouldn't you? Now, that's not a threat. Once again, that's not a threat. It's a metaphorical, It's a metaphor. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm not going to let it go, Ben. These people think that Americans, and you know who I'm talking about, they think Americans are stupid. They count on America and Americans to be as stupid as the deplorables that supine themselves in front of this Macho Man. Macho Man? He was dancing to Macho Man. Does he have no idea what that song is about? And that little wiggle is anything but macho, Donnie. Jeez. So, we have our work cut out for us now, don't we? Even Rick Gates came out, and apparently he's written an article that, oh yeah, all the polls say that, Joe's ahead. Well, it said the same thing about Hillary. Now, let me tell you something about polls. And he ought to know because he worked hand and mouth with Manafort, who worked with Deripaska and others. And those others being Vlad included. To pretty much install Trump in the Oval Office. And Rick Gates has an article that will show how, you think Joe's leading in the polls? Well, let me tell you something about polls. It doesn't matter. When you're able to game the system and maybe even flip votes on hackable voting machines, the hackable voting machines that have been sued in Georgia. And Brad Friedman of the Brad blog reported on the court filing, and the only way he could get reinstated on Twitter was to take that post down. A post about illegal filing on hackable voting machines. And yet, these theories about voter fraud with paper ballots. I mean, we have been yelling for decades we would like a voting machine with some paper ballots so we can tell if the ballots are being counted properly. We need a paper trail. Oh, no, you can't have a paper trail. People waiting 12 hours in line to vote. Well, let me rephrase that. Counties that have a predominantly black or minority population, 12 hours to vote in this early voting part of our cycle. 12 hours standing in line, some even longer. Oh, and how is it that this goes on every election too? How is it that in predominantly black or minority counties, their voting machines and their counters all seem to go on the fritz? Oh, yeah, we have a software problem. We don't know why. Every cycle they do this. People have waited for hours and hours and hours in line. They finally get into the building where the actual polling ballot area is. And official comes out and says, oh, sorry, we're going to be delayed for even longer now. Our machines aren't working. We can't even get people to vote. Sorry. Well, you know, what would be nice is some paper ballots over there. Fill them out, drop them in a ballot box right there in the facility. Oh, no, we can't do that. That would be increasing the franchise, and we can't increase the franchise. Anytime someone starts using the term franchise when it revolves around democracy, you know something is terribly wrong. They didn't even have the concept of franchise in the original intent. Amy? She even came out and said that her originalism would have probably caused her to overrule Brown v. Board of Education because, hey, original intent. There were no franchises back during the writing of the Constitution. I just want to make that clear. Okay. The concept of franchise came much later in the 20th century. Please. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, I actually consider this to be wonderful news because it means that there are actually scientists doing science to protect us. One of the arguments I have against the anti-vaxxers, I mean measles and rubella and mumps, you know, the people who say, oh, we can't vax our kids because Big Pharma is trying to poison us. Actually, you know, when you're developing drugs for Big Pharma, they actually go through a lot more science than we give them credit for. Those drugs were absolutely vetted. The ones that were hurting us were the ones that were rushed through and not vetted properly. And that was because of political expediency, not to put money into the pockets of Big Pharma, though that's what it did. Big Pharma is under gross oversight, and I mean gross oversight in massive amount, and it's good. And they go through various tiers of studies to be able to come to the conclusion that a particular medicine is safe for people to use. So this is good news that a second late-stage COVID-19 vaccine trial has been paused because of a participant's unexplained illness. I'm sure Trump wants to find out who that person is and try them in the court of public opinion, because they got that court packed too, apparently, with a lot of media types. On the rest of the menu, California ordered the GOP to remove its illegal, unofficial ballot boxes, but the GOP arrogantly refuses. Yeah, they're just going to do it because, hey, we do what we want no matter what the law is or rules. The wealthy GOP donors' lawsuit responsible for the mass resignations from Texas AG Ken Paxton's office is now suing Paxton's office. He wants relief. And ethics groups accused Barr of using the DOJ as a political tool and called for his impeachment. And that could not come too soon. We got to do that. Why don't we run that through real quick, like, eh? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Mexico charged the United States with performing surgery on 2 Mexican migrant women at a detention center was against their will. And Facebook is updating its hate speech policy to ban any content that denies or distorts the Holocaust. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage, that just happens to be at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you, yes, you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you can join those who already are Patreons of Netroots Radio. And some of those are giving the equivalent of an espresso-type coffee drink. The funds of those are sent to us once a month, and we stretch those dollars way, way, way beyond compare. And I also want to thank you to those of you, and you know who you all are, who have increased their monthly contribution pledge to Netroots Radio. And it couldn't have come at a better time. Oh, thank you, because we're in the crunch time now. It's getting towards the end of the year, and it's not just the actual machinery. We have to buy all the software too. Only so much will transfer, then I've got to buy new stuff. Darn it. Anyway, really thank you to those of you who have increased your monthly pledge. And I know it's only for some months, but those some months come at just the right time. Oh my gosh. Anyway, those others of you out there who might be able, now look, there's an election cycle obviously going around, and money needs to go there. And do not take money away from your own survival. Okay. You know, it's an old adage. Don't invest in the market with your rent money. Okay. Only disposable income that you can throw away. And you're not throwing it away when you toss it towards us, because we are quantum mechanics in our ability to stretch those dollars beyond all measurement. And things only exist because we can measure them. So it's beyond all measurement. You know, I'm getting a little bit too illogical here. Let's reel this back into reality. For some reason, this society insists that if we pay our bills, pretty much they'll leave us alone, pretty much. So we fly under the radar. We are able to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. And then we can go along our merry way and hope for a better world, elect more and better Democrats, due process, equal protection for all, and I don't know. How about food security would be another nice thing? Or how about security from pandemics? Okay. That's what we are striving for. And we're not giving it up. We are not. And we thank you for really allowing us to do so, because this is not a hobby. Okay. It's truly a calling. And we thank you for allowing us to fulfill our calling. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple, because Tom just makes things so simple. You just go to @Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom. And Tom is really busy with all sorts of stuff, let alone just trying to survive in wildfires and pandemics. Jeez. He's been doing a lot of work for David's show, too, and thank you for doing that. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's. And then I put that up on my Twitter account at Justice Putnam. And then you can follow the show notes and links that way. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly, please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. Oh, did I say iTunes? Yes, I did. Okay, and also, not to forget, the Justice Department Musique Sans Frontières is also available on Spreaker and a few other platforms as well. Now, that's my Sunday music show. We call it the Wildfire Pandemic and Civil Unrest broadcast and then the podcast. So 8 p.m. on Sunday nights, that show goes on Netroots Radio, and then on podcasts, and then we post that up on social media a few times during the week. And as we get ready for the next Sunday show, while we're still in this wildfire pandemic and civil unrest, indeed. And even when we're not, we still have the show. So tune in to the Justice Department Musique Sans Frontières, either on Sundays at 8 p.m. on the Pacific, and by podcasts in the usual places. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It's by Amy Taxon and Adam Beam of the Associated Press. California's chief elections official yesterday, Monday, ordered Republicans to remove unofficial ballot boxes, and those are ballot drop boxes, from churches, gun shops, and other locations. And Attorney General Xavier Becerra warned those behind the vote tampering could face prosecution. Republicans refused, saying they are taking advantage of California's liberal ballot collection law that allows anyone to collect ballots from voters and deliver them to county election offices. Actually, that's not true. You can't just collect them from anybody. And you certainly don't put up fake ballot drop boxes for people to drop their ballots in for you to then go through. Please. As of right now, we're going to continue our ballot harvesting program because harvesting is this term that Trump came up with, accusing Democrats of doing what they are doing. And that was Republican Party spokesman Hector Barajas. Due to the coronavirus and concerns about health safety at polling places, California, for the first time, mailed ballots for the November 3rd election to all active registered voters, more than 21 million people. The ballots came with prepaid envelopes for voters to mail back free of charge. But we know what's been happening with the post office now, haven't we? State law also allows county election officers to set up drop boxes throughout the county where people can drop off their ballots in person. The secure boxes can sometimes weigh more than 600 pounds and are monitored frequently by local election officials. Republicans have set up their own drop boxes at churches, gas stations, and gun shops in at least 3 California counties, and that's at least, because reports are coming in that there is much more. And I'm kind of curious on what it is on the national level. Some are identified as secure ballot drop-off location, while others say approved and bought by the GOP because the Attorney General said take off official ballot drop box from those boxes now. The party declined to say precisely how many boxes have been distributed and where they all have been placed because they can't win unless they cheat. Is that in this reporter's opinion? I think that's probably a factual basis, but we'll just say it's also my opinion. Secretary of State Alex Padilla, a Democrat, said state law only allows county election officials to set up official ballot drop boxes with rules for how often the ballots are retrieved. He said those unofficial drop boxes lack those protections, making them vulnerable to tampering. Padilla said his chief legal counsel sent Republicans a letter yesterday, Monday, ordering them to remove those boxes by Thursday. He also ordered them to provide the state with the names, addresses, and birthdays of all voters who have already dropped off ballots. Attorney General Xavier Becerra, also a Democrat, went further, threatening to prosecute anyone who knowingly engages in the tampering or misuse of a vote. We hope that message goes out loud and clear to anyone who is trying to improperly solicit, obtain, and manage a citizen's vote that they are subject to prosecution, Becerra said. I am trying to be careful with how I say this, but the reports we are hearing are disturbing. Padilla declined to speculate on why Republicans would be collecting votes via unofficial drop boxes. Our interest is in protecting the integrity of this election, he said. Bahara said the party's drop boxes just provide voters with another opportunity to cast their ballots. You little twerp. In a news release, the California Republican Party said state law does not specifically ban them from collecting ballots in a box. The law only prevents tampering or forging ballots, and that people collecting the ballots cannot be paid for doing it. It appears Republicans are well within their right to collect ballots in this manner. It's just the Democrats don't like it. Republican State Senator Melissa Melendez posted on her official Twitter account. The controversy surfaced during the weekend after state election officials received reports of boxes in Fresno, Los Angeles, and Orange counties, all areas with highly competitive U.S. House races. Democrats have blasted the use of the unofficial boxes, and they say they fear Republicans could use them to gather and discard ballots. Now, of course, Trump says that's what's happening when people, put their ballots in the official way. Democrats are just throwing our ballots away. They're throwing them in the river. What river? It's in the river. Hundreds of thousands of ballots people voted for me, and they're all in the river. What river is that, Donnie? The Democrats are such evil people. They're witches. And then the media wants to know why Biden won't talk about court packing. Indeed. In California, state law says voters who can't return their ballots themselves can ask anyone else to do it for them. Previously, people who returned a ballot for someone else also had to sign it and list their relationship to the voter, but a separate law passed in 2018 eliminated that requirement. In Orange County, which is home to 3 million people between L.A. and San Diego, a regional field director for the state GOP posed for a photo with one of the boxes because they love to troll you when they're breaking the law and then say, we're perfectly within the law, you liberal. The image posted on social media showed him wearing a face covering supporting the congressional campaign of Michelle Steele, a Republican county supervisor. Steele is challenging Democratic U.S. Rep. Harley Ruda for his seat representing a coastal district. And Ruda flipped the seat 2 years ago from longtime Republican representative and Russian operative Dana Rohrabacher. Orange County Register of Voters Neil Kelly said official drop boxes are clearly recognizable and carry official county elections logo. He said it wasn't clear how many voters had used unofficial boxes, but after receiving reports about them, he noted the state and district attorney's office, which is investigating. Rachel Putasek, a spokeswoman for the Democratic Party of Orange County, said she did not know what Republicans planned to do with the ballots they collected and worried they could target Democratic areas with boxes to suppress votes. Maybe those votes will go in the river. Which river? I think maybe the Santa Ana River. There also were reports of GOP drop boxes at a church in L.A. County, and that was in Castaic. that's how we pronounce it, Castaic, and at various locations in Fresno County and California's farm-rich Central Valley, where Devin Nunes is running. Interesting, eh? Fresno County Republicans said they will remove the boxes and ballots will be turned in to county election officials, which was always the plan. The Sacramento Bee reported. Really? That was always the plan? Sounds to me like you got caught. Jake Bleiberg of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is already facing calls to resign and accusations of crimes by his own staff over an investigation sought by one of his wealthy donors. Now, the Republicans' office is contending with a threat of possible legal action from that donor. In a letter sent on Sunday, a lawyer for Austin real estate developer Nate Paul wrote that Paxton's staff was always hostile to the probe. The letter does not specifically say Paul will sue, but it is styled as a litigation hold, demanding the preservation of all related documents. It also questions the legitimacy of the announcement last week that was closing the investigation. The letter adds to the confusion surrounding investigations and legal disputes that came to public attention this month when 7 top lawyers in Paxton's office accused him of bribery, abuse of office, and other crimes. The unspecified accusations stem from the Attorney General hiring an outside lawyer to look into Paul's claims of wrongdoing by state and federal law enforcement. What's funny about this is that Paxton whined about the $300 an hour lawyers that were looking into a security fraud crimes. And yet he hired an outside lawyer with no experience, by the way, to look into these accusations and this wealthy donor. In other words, he put in a lackey to lose the case. And you know what? He got caught. Mark Hosenball of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 2 private groups focused on U.S. government ethics accused Attorney General William Barr of misusing his office to support Trump's political goals and called on the House of Representatives to begin impeachment proceedings against him. The University of Pennsylvania Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law, along with Washington-based Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, said Barr could not be trusted to represent the work of his department accurately, and that there were problems with the truthfulness of Barr's public statements. Justice Department officials did not immediately respond to requests for comment because Barr has not yet given a proof of live video since he went into quarantine. Where is he? What is he trying to hide? The groups, in a 267-page research paper, allege that Barr's, quote, authoritarian worldview limits the degree with which he regards himself as bound by the rule of law and makes him see himself as entitled to ignore the laws, ethics, and historical practices, end quote, at the Justice Department. The paper highlighted several Barr actions, including what it described as his intentional mischaracterizations of Robert Mueller's probe into Russian interference in the 2016 election, as well as Barr's move to assign U.S. Attorney John Durham to conduct his own investigation of the Mueller probe. While Trump has long bristled at the suggestion that foreign interference helped his 2016 upset victory, multiple reviews by U.S. intelligence agencies concluded that Russia acted to undercut rival Hillary Clinton's chances in that election. The authors of the report called on the Democratic-led House of Representatives to begin formal impeachment inquiry, the first step toward removing him from office. The Republican-controlled Senate earlier this year acquitted Trump after a House impeachment proceeding accused him of misusing his office, and he was indeed impeached. He will always be impeached, but the Vichy collaborators of the Senate would not remove him from office. House officials did not immediately respond to a request for comment, and of course a little more than 3 weeks remain until the November 3rd elections, and Trump is seeking a second term. Well, that was great reporting by some Cub reporters. Hey, come on. We already know all this. But anyway, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky. On October 7th, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier shared the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the development of the gene editing tool called CRISPR. Last April, I spoke with Doudna at an event in Washington, D.C.
A few months ago, I was at a talk about wine, and CRISPR came up. And it was an appropriate thing to bring up. What is it like to be in this field right now where everyone is talking about the work that you do and its implications?
Well, I have to say it's very exciting, and it's, as a scientist, wonderful to see all the creative work that's going on with gene editing. It's just a fascinating opportunity to see the innovation that people come up with when they have a tool that's so broadly useful across biology.
You do a million interviews and you make a lot of public talks. What do people not talk to you about that you would love to talk about regarding CRISPR?
Well, I think a lot of the discussion around CRISPR right now focuses on biomedical applications, which clearly are very exciting. I think something that I don't hear as much, although I'm happy to hear that you have this conversation at a wine event, are the opportunities in agriculture. I think they're going to be huge, and I'm really, really excited about the opportunities to use gene editing to create plants that will be drought tolerant, pest resistant, maybe more nutritious, give farmers opportunities to grow plants in environments where in the past they've been really challenging to grow.
Yeah, it's just the range of applications is just seemingly endless.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the wine talk we were discussing the threats to viniculture from global warming.
Right.
And one of the possible applications there is to get the more heat-tolerant organisms to chip in and help the wine grapes.
Yeah.
I know you talk about the ethical considerations a lot, anything you'd like to discuss
No,
about
I think
that?
the ethical considerations are incredibly important. People get very excited and concerned, appropriately, I think, on occasion about opportunities to use gene editing in systems where, we really need to be thoughtful about the responsible use, where there are great opportunities, but also big challenges. And, of course, a very obvious one is in the human germline embryo editing, but also, frankly, also in microbes and other organisms that could be released into the environment using gene editing to spread genetic traits in a mode called gene drives. So that's another area where there's a lot of discussion about how careful we need to be, how do we regulate this technology appropriately, how do we encourage science to advance, but do it in a way that's responsible.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
Sweetie, want some fruit? You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
The plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has raised the question, are private militias legal or constitutionally protected? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The militia is mentioned a number of times in the Constitution. Article 1 gives Congress the power to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Article 1 also gives Congress the power to organize and discipline the militia, while at the same time reserving to the states the right to train the militia. Article 2, on the executive branch, says that the President shall be the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into actual service of the United States. And the Second Amendment talks about a well-regulated militia. What these 5 constitutional provisions make clear is that the militia is a governmental entity only, not a private one. Indeed, the Supreme Court's Heller decision, written by Justice Scalia, which held that there is a private right to bear arms for self-defense, also says that the Second Amendment does not prevent the prohibition of private paramilitary organizations. So, in this election season, let's be clear. Private groups, private militias have no right to call themselves into military service. They have no right to violate state anti-paramilitary laws, and they have no right to intimidate people who are attempting to exercise their right to vote. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1985. That was the day that clerical and support staff at Columbia University went out on strike. More than 1,000 staff members were represented by the United Auto Workers District 65. The workers wanted improvements in their benefits and their wages. They were also concerned by pay discrimination for women and minorities. 2 days before the proposed strike was set to begin, the workers held a rally. Trade union leaders spoke out in support of the clerical staff. In a show of solidarity among Ivy League schools, members of the Clerical Staff Union from Yale University made the trip from New Haven, Connecticut to New York City to support the Columbia workers. The Yale Union had won its first contract just the year before after a 10-week strike. The Yale delegation chanted, "We love you, 65. Oh, yes, we do. We whipped the Ivy League, and you can too." The strike lasted for 5 days. Some of the students formed the support group Students for a Fair Contract and helped pass out leaflets on the picket line. The Teamsters refused to cross the picket lines, stopping deliveries to the campus. According to the Columbia Spectator newspaper, the final contract included significant gains for the members. They won a 6% increase with retroactivity and additional hikes for minority workers, lower deductibles on medical insurance, and non-discriminatory clause and new technology language. The union's victory at Columbia was part of a wave of strikes by clerical workers at some of the nation's top schools. Stanford University went on strike in 1974 and 1982. Cornell's staff held 3 strikes during the 1980s. The workers who run these elite, well-funded institutions were standing up for their rights as workers.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown, Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting to be a bit cooler than yesterday, topping out about 70, which we were about 72 yesterday. A few showers developing during the afternoon. Oh my, winds will be out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy tonight with increasing clouds. Winds will be light and variable, lows in the upper 40s. And tomorrow, sunshine along with some cloudy intervals, highs around 70. Winds will be light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County here in southern Oregon have now spiked to 1,372 with confirmed 6 dead, and that is obviously a vast undercount. Pollen is rated as none. The air quality index is good at 19 parts per million. That is very good. And the daytime UV index is moderate at 4. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.16 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 93%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 51 with rain. Paris is 56 and partly cloudy. Rome is 65 and sunny. Kyiv is 66 and fair. Kabul is 60 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 74 with rain and wind. Tokyo is 70 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 63 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and fair. And New York is 57 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people plan to purchase personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Mexico's foreign ministry said it has identified 2 Mexican migrant women who had surgery performed on them without their consent while detained at a U.S. immigration center in the state of Georgia. While being held at the Irwin Center in Georgia, one Mexican woman was subject to gynecological surgery without her approval and without receiving post-operative care. The ministry said its findings were based on actions taken by consular staff and interviews Mexican officials conducted at the center. Officials were also verifying in the case of a second woman who may have been subject to surgical intervention without her full consent, without receiving an explanation in Spanish of the procedure or her medical diagnosis, it added. It did not name the women. The ministry last month said it had identified a woman subjected to surgery in the center, but did not specify whether she had given her consent. And ICE did not respond to a request for comment because cruelty is the reason.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Elizabeth Coulaford of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Facebook said it was updating its hate speech policy to ban any content that denies or distorts the Holocaust. The move comes after 2 years after Mark Zuckerberg said in a 2018 interview with tech website Recode that while he found Holocaust denial deeply offensive, he did not think Facebook should delete such content. I've struggled with the tension between standing for free expression and the harm caused by minimizing or denying the horror of the Holocaust, said Zuckerberg, who is Jewish. And he said that on a Facebook post yesterday, Sunday. My own thinking has evolved, and I've seen data showing an increase in anti-Semitic violence, as have our wider policies on hate speech. Well, this is what happens when you drop out of Harvard without taking one humanities class, not one, so you can make more money than God. And God doesn't even care about money. The social media company said that starting later this year, it would also direct people searching for terms associated with the Holocaust or its denial to credible information off Facebook. The World Jewish Congress and the American Jewish Committee praised the move. For several years, the World Jewish Congress has advocated for Facebook to remove Holocaust denial from its platform. A group said in a statement. This summer, civil rights groups organized a widespread Facebook boycott to try to pressure social media companies to act against hate speech on their platforms. Well, good news then. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, like that Barrett confirmation hearing. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.